Hey guys, Anton the Tech Chap, and let me give you the 30-second elevator pitch for the new RTX 3080 Ti. And this is about 8% or so faster than the standard 3080, so if I pop that there, and about 3% slower than the 3090 in my gaming test. So in terms of performance, this is much closer to the 90 than the 80, but in terms of pricing, it's near enough halfway between them. This is £400 more than the 3080 and $350 less than the 90. So a touch closer to the 90, although that's RRP, and in the real world, who knows? And time. So the 3090 is still a touch faster, and it also has double the VRAM. So if you're using this for workstation applications, then this will definitely be worth paying that extra for. For gaming, if you can buy one, because that's the other big question, this really is the new king, but it's still an awful lot of money. So I think the 3080 will end up still being a better buy, but we'll come back to that in a second. Okay, let's talk specs, and we're getting over 10,000 CUDA cores, which is an 18% bump over the vanilla 3080 and only 2.5% fewer than the 3090. Also, versus the 3080, the Ti gets an extra 2 gigs of VRAM, taking up to 12 gigs, more ray tracing and tensor cores for DLSS and other AI features, and also a higher 250 watt power limit. You can also see the 3080 and the Ti are exactly the same size, which is to say pretty reasonable compared to the beast, the behemoth that is the 3090, which is just, it's absolutely massive, this thing. So if you are considering maybe a micro ATX build, then this 3090 is probably a no-go, but you should be okay with the new 80 Ti. And it looks pretty much the same as the standard 3080 as well, although we do get this little etched Nvidia logo on the shroud, which isn't on the older cards. Now, Nvidia claims the 3080 Ti is 1.5 times faster than the last gen 2080 Ti in both rasterized and ray trace games, while retailing for a similarly eye-watering $1,200, so it's not actually any cheaper than the 2080 Ti it's replacing. But as with any graphics card review right now, it's all a bit academic because it's just so hard to find them. I can't remember a more difficult time to be a PC gamer if you actually want to upgrade. I would rather that they'd stopped releasing new cards and just focus on building as many of the current cards as possible. I'm sure you'd agree if you're trying to buy one for yourself, although let me know what you think in the comments below. On the other hand, having more options is always a good thing, and it means you can hopefully match the GPU to your budget, but we'll have to see what it ends up being in the real world. Just a quick side note, if you haven't yet subscribed, well, I highly recommend you to press that button right now because as well as this video using this PC, as I say, with the 11th gen i9 11900K chip and some pretty crazy specs, I've also built an AMD Ryzen build with the 5950X, and also I'll talk you through my own personal setup upgrade and why I've gone for what I've gone with. So subscribe, give me a thumbs up, hit that bell, all those annoying things. Let's get to the benchmarks. So Nvidia sent over this FE version of the card for review. I was supposed to get an ROG third-party card as well, but it hasn't really arrived in time for this review. And of course, those cards have beefier aftermarket coolers and are usually quite a bit better for overclocking, so that's something I'll revisit in another video soon. But let's start with a game that can bring all these cards to their knees: Fortnite. Yes, it's true actually. Turn on ray tracing effects even to medium and it absolutely demolishes the frame rate, especially with everything else set to the maxed out epic setting at 4K. In fairness, you can make the DLSS more aggressive, but then this can affect the image quality a little bit, so I stuck to balanced. And so in Fortnite, the 3080 Ti was 5% faster at 1440 and a solid 11% faster at 4K compared to the 3080, while the 3090 was decently quicker at 1440p, but only about 2% faster at 4K. Next up, a bit of Call of Duty Warzone, and this has a fairly basic ray tracing mode, so I turned that on and upped most of the settings to the max as well. Now interestingly, Warzone saw the biggest gains going from the 3080 to the Ti, around 20% at both resolutions, hitting 100 FPS at 1440 and 155 at 1440p. That's a pretty sizable and worthwhile jump, although going from the Ti to the 3090 netted me just an extra 5% at 1440 and a more meaningful 10% at 4K. Just for context, I'm mainly focusing on 1440 and 4K because any of these three cards will be more than capable of maxing out a 1080p 240Hz screen with medium to high settings, so really, you're only going to want to buy these if you are playing at the higher resolutions. Alright, let's move on to Cyberpunk, which is one of the most demanding games out there right now, but these are top-end cards, so I maxed out RT in every setting I could, and set DLSS to performance to avoid single-digit frame rates. It's pretty clear that 1440p is the way to play this, with all three cards getting between 71 and 75 FPS, although the Ti and the 3090 scored the same. At 4K, things got a lot tougher, with all three cards in the low 50s, and again, the difference between all three was literally a frame or two, which is really within the margin of error. Next up, we have the excellent Metro Exodus, which has just had a total ray tracing revamp in its new Enhanced Edition, with its new Extreme RT setting being ridiculously demanding until DLSS comes to the rescue again. So playing at the more realistic Ultra RT settings, I was getting close to 100 FPS at 4K with the Ti, which was around 8% faster than 3080, and weirdly 6% faster than 3090. And it was a similar story at 1440. Now Hitman 3 may not be one of the best looking games, but it's still a serious test for any GPU, and I love the fact that it has a built-in benchmark. So here the Ti was only 3% ahead at both resolutions, nothing you would really notice, while the 3090 was a further 4 and 5% faster at the two resolutions. Again though, even against the 3080, that is an improvement, but it's not really that noticeable. And finally, if we switch to some synthetic benchmarks, in 3D Mark Time Spy, the Ti was 9% faster than the 3080, and the 3090 was just 2% faster than the Ti. All of which shows the Ti really is closer to the top tier card overall. It's also worth noting that during my testing, the 3080 Ti actually got quite a bit hotter than the 3080, and yet the fan stayed relatively slow even under sustained load in firm arc. However, the regular 3080 had its fans going into full jet engine mode. This thing really does get loud. So in reality, at least when it comes to these FE versions of the cards, one of the biggest upgrades coming from the 80 is just how much quieter the Ti is under sustained load. Interestingly, the 3090 was just as quiet as the Ti, but it managed it with lower temperatures thanks to the far larger heatsink chassis, which must be in the order of twice the thermal capacity as the 3080s. It's also worth noting that the boost clocks on the Ti are actually a little bit slower than the regular 3080, and it throttles down to a little bit lower under sustained loads as well, although all three maintained their memory clocks during my testing. Okay, let's wrap up, and it's interesting because the conclusion I've come to is buy the 3080. Even though I think the 3080 Ti is the new flagship gaming card if you want the best of the best, really, because yes, while the 3090 is technically 2.5 to 3% faster, so realistically not many people should buy the 3090, which leaves these two. And in my testing, the 3080 Ti is 8 to 9% faster than the 3080, so it's a nice little boost in performance, and if you are one of those weirdos playing at 4K because 1440p is just not sharp enough for you, then every frame counts. So this will be worth buying, and for $1,200, supposedly, that's the retail, we'll have to see what it ends up being, it's a very good card and just kind of gives you 3090 performance for less money in a smaller package. So this is the new king for me. However, the fact that this is only giving us a maximum of about a 10% boost over the 3080, and yet going by MSRP, is 61% more expensive than the 3080. In terms of bang for buck, in terms of the card I would actually buy, I would go with the 3080. Or let's wait and see how the 3070 Ti, which has just been announced, performs compared to these guys, because that could be the new sweet spot, especially for 1440p gaming. But the most frustrating thing is that there's all this amazing tech from Nvidia, but no one can actually bloody buy them because they're just out of stock constantly or being scalped, to some extent even used for mining, although they are cutting that down in terms of limiting performance with updates, but it's still a bit hit or miss. In reality, these could be 50% more expensive. You may never be able to buy one for 6 months, so we'll have to see. But I do feel your frustration. In some ways, as I said at the beginning, maybe they should just stop making new cards for a minute and focus on building more of them. I'm not sure if that's how the manufacturing process works. I'm sure they're doing their best. But what do you think? If you could buy a new graphics card right now to upgrade your PC, which one would you go for? And would you consider the new 3080 Ti or not? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button below so you don't miss out on any of my new videos. And I will see you next time, hopefully, if you enjoyed it, right here on the Tech Chat. Cheers for watching.